Hello and welcome to the Inns of Court Armoured Car Regiment channel. Today we will be covering the events of December the 1st to December the 31st, 1944. Having been relieved from their previous frontline positions and patrols by the 2nd Battalion King's Shropshire Light Infantry Regiment and the 1st Battalion of the Royal Norfolk Regiment, the Inns of Court relocated to a new part of the front line, which would take up their duties from the 1st till the 16th of December. They were tasked with occupying observation posts and defensive positions in the area from Maeterlinck to Slogen. These were maintained during the day, and stronger defensive measures were taken at night, following the events in the previous month. In order to carry out these tasks, the front was patrolled and held by two of the regiment squadrons, while the other two were held in reserve at Helmont. During this period, the 4th and 5th Dutch Patriot Companies came under the command of the Inns of Court and patrolled forward of their positions. In order to maintain communication and cohesion between the Dutch companies and the Inns of Court Regiment, liaison officers from the Inns of Court were attached to the headquarters of each of the Dutch platoons. Over this period, the Inns of Court's positions came under the usual sporadic shelling. Observations on the enemy's activities were rather domestic, from washing plates in the River Meuse, carrying bedding from one billet to another, and courting the village belle, who wore a white pinafore, and was the possessor of considerable affections from the Luftwaffe. On the 14th, C Squadron's Blitztroop had the misfortune of having their positions come under a night attack again. The Blitztroop was holding a defensive position on the outskirts of the village gun. The position was rather isolated and consisted of a number of trenches placed at strategic points around an empty cottage, which was being used as living and sleeping quarters by the Blitztroop. The position was only 200 yards from the River Meuse, which at this point was flowing through wooded terrain, making a clear view of the river impossible. Halfway between the cottage and the river was a large farmhouse, which was used as a forward position and artillery observation post during the day, as the loft of this building provided a clear view of the far bank of the river, where German trenches and a few boats had been noted. On the night of the 13th, the Blitz troop of C Squadron became aware that something was going on, and their sentries began to hear noises coming from the direction of the river. At first the clanking of a winch and the banging of hammers, followed by a roaring of what was believed to be the engine of a tank, which seemed to be getting ever closer. For a moment the troops wondered if the Germans ferried a tank across the river. Voices could be heard from the direction of the farmhouse, which was unoccupied at night. However, the night of the 13th passed with no further incident. Due to a change in plans, C Squadron's Blitztroop found itself at the same positions on the night of the 14th, even though it was D Squadron's turn on the front line. Because of the events of the previous night and month, C Squadron's Blitztroop was extra wary. Extra sentries were posted, with 2 pairs in the trenches facing the river, a pair at the cottage, and another pair at the half-tracks. Monty's moonlight, searchlights that were to bounce light off of cloud cover to improve visibility, were on, but of not much use due to little cloud cover that night. The lieutenant took a small patrol out to the river's edge, in order to be close at hand should the noises of the previous night reoccur. At 8 o'clock the sentry spotted movement in the hayfield to the forward left of the cottage's position, between the cottage and the river. At first it was thought this might be the earlier patrol returning, but when 2 of the trip flares that surrounded the defensive positions went off, the enemy was revealed to be within 25 yards. The Germans threw themselves to the ground. At the same time, someone opened fire with a Bren, sweeping the field. As the trip flares went out, a sentry shot up a flare almost instantly to keep the enemy illuminated. However, the Germans had retreated and could be seen running into the hayfield. The Bren continued to fire, sweeping the field in any possible cover that the Germans might find. As the flare went out, another set of trip flares went off from the small woods to the forward right of the cottage. Stens and Brens opened fire at the woods, and the Germans responded in kind with Spandau fire. Grenades were exchanged, and the cottage was hit by a Panzerfaust, which kicked up an incredible amount of dust. The roof of the cottage began to burn thanks to German tracer fire, and a small party were detached from the forward trenches to put out the fire. Another party of the Blitz troop were rapidly refilling Bren magazines, meaning that of the 18 men of the Blitz troop, the trenches were only actively being held by 8 men. After an hour of exchanging fire, the Blitz troop was finding that it was running low on ammunition, and an urgent request for ammunition and reinforcements was put through to the squadron's headquarters. Another telephone call also went out requesting artillery support. Shortly afterwards, the small woods was coming under accurate artillery fire. The German shooting ceased. They fired up 2 flares from their wood, which was responded by a single flare from the far bank of the river. This was an obvious sign of withdrawal. At around 11 o'clock, some movement was noted by the sentries, and another short bout of shooting ensued. At midnight, the relief and reinforcement force from the squadron headquarters arrived, having become lost on their way to the Blitz troops' position. In the morning, 3 bodies of Fallschirmjäger troops were found in the field. Each one had been booby-trapped, clasping a live grenade in their hands. On the 16th of December, the regiment was relieved by the 1st Battalion Royal Norfolk Regiment, and on the 17th of December, the regiment came under the command of the 4th Armoured Brigade. From the 17th till the 30th, the Inns of Court became responsible for a new stretch of the River Meuse, from Kinroy to Maassuyck to Heistinger, which had previously been under the watchful eye of the 43rd Wessex Reconnaissance Regiment. However, the Inns of Court were not alone in their task during this period, and were supported by a battery of anti-tank guns from the 63rd Worcestershire and Oxfordshire Yeomanry Anti-Tank Regiment. The patrols were as follows. 2 squadrons would hold the line between Maassuyck to Heistinger, while a 3rd patrol would carry out security patrols between Strampoy to Maassuyck via Kinroy. The 4th squadron would be held in reserve. Very little of note occurred during this period, and it was remarkably quiet and shell-free. On the 25th of December, each squadron hosted their own Christmas dinner. C Squadron was hosted at Maassuyck, only a mile away from enemy positions. On the 31st of December, the Inns of Court were relieved by the 44th Royal Tank Regiment and taken out of the line, sent to Helmont to rest. No casualties were suffered during the month of December. References are on the screen, and I hope you can join me on January the 14th in the next video in this series of the Inns of Court's War Diary, which will cover the regiment's actions from January the 1st to January the 31st, 1945. Kind regards and cheerio.